Hey there, Rick here. Thanks for tuning in. And if you don't know me yet, with the 100th Hill, I bring to you all the best information from everywhere that helps you be fucking awesome and the best version of yourself that you can be. Today, I'm going to be hitting you hard with two big things. The first one, why are we always so stressed out all the time? And two, why thinking like a caveman will help you feel more calm under pressure. Firstly, what's going on when we feel anxious or stressed? Let's start with some simple science. When a human is faced with an external stressor, a hormone is released called cortisol, which is vital in the fight or flight response. It increases our heart rate, increases sugars, redirects energy from non-essential processes like the immune system in order to make sure that we have the maximum chance of surviving the threat. It kind of puts us on steroids temporarily to ensure our survival. So let's look at a couple of examples of how that worked in prehistoric times. Mr. Caveman is thirsty because he hasn't drunk in days. Driven by cortisol, he pushes on beyond what he thought he could, and eventually he finds some water. Or he's stalking some deer and he aims his bow, but then that deer is spooked and starts running. Cortisol is released, and just like his Usain Bolt, he chases after his prey because if he doesn't get this deer, his tribe won't eat tonight. Or how about this? The tribe is asleep and Mr. Caveman is on night watch for predators. Some wolves show up and the tribe is in danger. His cortisol spikes and he alerts everybody who's sleeping. They wake up, their cortisol spikes. The women and children, they run promptly for the safest part of the camp, while the men, they use their elevated cortisol levels to fight back the menacing predator. So it's easy to see that cortisol's awesome. It kept us alive up until now. But things were very different back then. See, back then, we either survived the threat or we died. We caught the deer or we went hungry. We found water or we went thirsty. And the cortisol spike, it lasted as long as the threat to our survival, which was usually minutes or hours, maybe a day or two. I mean, in those days, if you had a threat to survival that was lasting longer than a couple of days, you were probably going to be dead. And that's because we lived in what was known as an immediate return environment. And that means that basically everything that we did had a result pretty much straight away. But somewhere in the last few millennia, we changed things very, very quickly. We created currencies and education and farming, and they became investing and business and industry. And all of a sudden, we found ourselves as humans living in a delayed return environment where we do things today with the expectation of a return in several months, maybe even many, many years. Now, you might think that a few thousand years isn't exactly a short period of time, but it really, really is. The brain of Homo sapiens in its current form has been this way for about 200,000 years, and it took a few million years to get to that point. But the concept of a delayed return environment is less than 1,000 years old. So while we can change the makeup of society in just a few centuries, or these days even a few weeks, we can't change our brains anywhere near as quickly. Our brain secretes cortisol whenever it perceives a threat for as long as that threat is present. And so this mismatch between our world and our biology is now the reason that cortisol runs rife in our veins, even though whenever we're thirsty, all we have to do today is turn on a tap. Because the lack of water now has been replaced by a slowing economy, or the spooked deer is a promotion we didn't get. The wolves are a virus that we can't see. These threats are no longer lasting minutes or hours, sometimes they're lasting years. And so if cortisol increases our heart rate, it diverts energy away from our immune system, amongst other biological processes. What do you think being in this state for days, weeks, or months is doing to us? That's right, cortisol has kept humankind alive for millions of years, but now prolonged elevated cortisol levels are killing us. It causes fatigue, headaches, depression or anxiety, weight gain, increased blood pressure, or low libido, or, even erectile dysfunction. So we know that we need to keep our stressors under control, but with all of this stuff that we've just learned, what do we do about it? Well, firstly, a great place to start is with short-term goals. Now, keep in mind that we've just identified that our brains are still wired for an immediate return environment, just like our Homo sapiens ancestors. So taking those goals that might be taking months or years and breaking them down to something that gives you a more immediate return is a great place to start. While long-term goals are great, break them down into smaller goals, something that enables you to achieve something every few days or a week at most. Keep track of these short-term goals and ensure that they're guiding you. Ticking a box of success releases dopamine that makes us happy and confirms to your brain that you're on the right track and there is no threat. Second, keep track of your wins and not your losses. Now, if you haven't seen my video on creating great habits, I'll put a link up here. Make sure you watch that because that outlines in detail how to go about this most effectively. But essentially, all we're doing here is keeping track of the things that we do that are important to us. So whether it's exercise or it's saving money, keep track of the every day that you do it and you contribute towards this goal and focus on the fact that you are contributing to it. So don't worry so much about how much more weight you have to lose and focus on the fact that you've been so disciplined in going to the gym lately. Focus on how much money you've been saving lately and not on how much more you need for that deposit for a house. This is really important because what you're doing here is telling your brain that there is no threat. 3, understand the consequences. Now, remember, the primary purpose of cortisol is to support our fight or flight response to help us survive in the face of a threat. But in today's world, most of our threats will not kill us. In fact, in a lot of cases, the consequences aren't actually that bad. Really consider how bad the situation actually is. What is the consequence of the worst case scenario? If it's not that bad after you think about it, now your brain knows that. Those lurking wolves in the dark are actually a warthog. Still a bit of danger, but not as bad as a pack of wolves, right? And lastly, get the full view of the situation. Now, maybe they are actually wolves and shit is bad. Now you've got to do something about it. And one thing that causes us stress is the feeling of powerlessness. We need to feel like we have control to relieve the stress. So now we need to take that back. So make a list of everything that needs to be done and separate all of those things that need to be done into 2 areas. One, everything that you can control, that you can do yourself. And the second one needs to be everything that's out of your control. Everything you can't impact, reach out to those who can impact it and ensure that they're aware of their role in the situation, that they are needed. You can't save the tribe alone, so make sure you have the support you need. Everything you can impact, get to it. Start ticking items off the list. Every item that gets crossed off is a dopamine hit which makes you feel great and one step closer to validating your feeling of control of the situation. This is our caveman grandfather fighting back the wolves and dealing with the threat. Each wolf staved off makes him feel more and more in control as the threat begins to subside. So now that we have this great understanding of what's going on beneath the surface when we feel stressed, we can now use this information to take some power back when anxiety arises. Because the thing about stress is, it's nothing more than the feeling of powerlessness we have multiplied by our understanding of the consequences of the worst case scenario. So if we can limit those consequences, take back some power, things will feel a lot better for us very damn quickly. Thanks for watching. If you got a lot out of this, make sure you subscribe because there's heaps of great stuff at the 100th Hill that's going to help you even more. Give us a cheeky thumbs up because that'll help others. Next time you get stressed out, don't forget, just think like a caveman. Thank you, but for now it's hooroo from Rick.